What is up, my friends? How are we? You're very welcome along to tonight's Late Night Agenda 100. As always, my name's Craig, and I'm going to do my best to keep you right up to date with where we are in this summer's transfer window. Hint, it's not very far along. So what we're going to do tonight is have a chat around the news that David Ornstein broke earlier on that Richard Hughes looks like he will be departing Liverpool and will be off to Al Hilal. We'll be asking, is that a concern for you? And that's the very first poll question of this evening. Is Richard Hughes leaving for Al Hilal after the transfer window or at some stage between now and the end of the season a concern for you? For me, as I've said many times, it is a concern, not because I think Richard Hughes is irreplaceable. It's more just the constant churn of people in that position that I think is very concerning. We're also going to talk about the crazy links to Pedro Neto and ask, is this really true? Will Liverpool be looking at Pedro Neto? We'll talk a little bit more about Jules Koundé and a few other bits and pieces. But as always, any questions that you guys have, please feel free to fire them into the chat and I will do my best. How are we getting on in the Spain game, by the way? I didn't get a chance to even watch the first half of it, hence the reason I was a few minutes late. I was playing catch-up today, so I only just sat down here at about 5 to 9. Didn't even check in on the score. So yeah, look, we'll get through the Pedro Neto stuff. We'll talk about Lucas Stevenson moving to Bolton. We'll talk about Leone and DIJK, a little bit on Virgil van Dijk, of course, as well. It's 1-0 Spain. Thank you, Sinister. A bit on Jules Koundé, as we said as well. German national team job. Are we going to see Jurgen take over that one? Well, it looks like it could be the case. A little bit on the recruitment of coaching staff to come in and work with Andoni Iraola as well. And Manchester United interested in Alex Scott, according to Romano, but no mention of Liverpool. So I guess the first question that I would have tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is what the fuck is going on? Honestly, this feels weird. Like, I know it's still World Cup time, but we feel like we're really slow here in this process. And reaching out and speaking with people today, it seems to be a concern that I'm not on my own with. Now, look, I'll always admit to being impatient. That's not going to be any breaking news to any of you guys. But I do have concerns about the direction that this window is headed in. It feels like maybe we're going to have to make do with numbers 2, 3, and 4 on the list, maybe even a little bit lower. Or, heaven forbid, we just don't get the players at all. And that's something that I just don't think could be or should be on the table this summer. Things are getting done behind the scenes, said Colette Bowen. I don't know, Colette. I hope you're right. God, I hope you're right, Colette. But I don't know, mate. Something just feels eerie about this to me. And look, I have nothing to back that up. I don't. I'm not sitting here saying that I've got sensational information that I'm holding out on. But I don't know. I think to say things are getting done behind the scenes would have to also acknowledge then that you have faith in the process, right? And I don't at this point. I don't really have faith in the people who are responsible for this transfer window because, again, the proof of the pudding's in the eating and I'm bleeding starving. Ben Palmer said Richard Hughes secured his next job while he should have been doing his current job. His head's not in the game. Well, on that one, right, let me just read you out what David Ornstein said about it because something about this just doesn't make sense to me. So this from David Ornstein. He said, Simon Francis has joined Al Hilal and is a leading let me just start the clock actually. Simon Francis has joined Al Hilal and is leading the club's transfer activity with Liverpool sporting director Richard Hughes expected to follow his former colleague to the Saudi Pro League. Now, he goes on to say, Richard Hughes is fully focused on Liverpool's summer transfer business and supporting the club's new head coach, Andoni Iraola, throughout the current market. Hughes' contractual situation means this would naturally be his last transfer window at the club before a period of transition, which would follow a successor settling into his role. Now, I can't be the only one that read that and thought, are we just acknowledging that January doesn't exist then? The January transfer window doesn't exist. So Richie Rich, is he not even seeing out his contract? Because that's certainly how this reads to me. Like Richard Hughes will be here for this window and then he'll be off. So what does that mean for January and the planning for the January window? And why are we going to see our 7th sporting director come in through the doors in 10 years? You know, the lack of sporting director continuity has what's led to the contractual situation so many players have found themselves in. And that's not something that I think we should be celebrating as fans. It's a concern. Mr. A. Santino, how are you, my man? We're getting sold. That's what this feels like. We'll get trash. We won't buy anybody. I heavily dislike FSG. Most frustrated I've been in 5 weeks. So, on the frustration thing, Mr. Acentino, I have to say, I've been in quite good form over the past few weeks, and I wasn't really feeling too much frustration. But I have to say, dude, it's crept into me over the past week. I think probably since the Diamande situation, because look, it doesn't have to be your number one target all the time. But when we found out we missed out on him, I did expect us to start moving quickly elsewhere. We really haven't done that. And when you're starting to see names being thrown around that are just nowhere near good enough to come into Liverpool, it's frustrating, because like, these guys have had a long time to plan for this, and you just ask, what the fuck have they been doing? And why, again, is more of the headlines about Liverpool losing a sporting director to Saudi Arabia, and why do FSG not give a shit about that being a bad look? These are things that I can't help but consider as a fan. Why in God's green earth would we sign Neto? Hey, this isn't a Craig story, so I'll read this one out to you, but rest assured, this isn't me trying to sell you the idea of Pedro Neto. I believe it was Dave Davis, speaking on Anfield Index, said Liverpool seem to be back in bed with Jorge Mendes, the agent, of course, responsible for a lot of the Portuguese players. He said, whose client is Pedro Neto. He's very distinct, Neto, if I'm being positive about his career. His passing is good. He's a good crosser. His expected cross threat, 95th percentile. Cross value, 93rd percentile. And look, Dave wouldn't make this up. Dave is somebody who is very good at what he does, a good journalist, and would certainly have good sources on his information. But it kind of, I don't know, it just feels a little bit like this is sloppy seconds territory, if that's really what we're looking at. The idea that Pedro Neto could come in. Like, if we really wanted Pedro Neto that bad, why didn't we move from when he was leaving Wolves? The whole thing just feels a little bit like we're now scraping the barrel, trying to find solutions. Wayne, how are we, dude? Said, I don't mind going, but he's meant to focus on us this summer, and he clearly isn't, so he needs to go now for me. 35 months and counting, love you lots. Yeah, look, it's always felt weird to me, and I've never hidden it, the fact that Richard Hughes thinks he needs to go away from Liverpool and go to Al Hilal. He wouldn't have even got the job with me if I was Liverpool's owners and I knew he only wanted to come in for a 3-year stint. None of that makes sense to me, especially if you're building a project. Now, under Jurgen Klopp, it wasn't as big of a problem because Jurgen was always there, and Jurgen was always able to, reach out into the world and get things done. But when Jurgen left, and then we had, another set of sporting directors come in again, it just feels to me like the club's being let drift a little bit here by FSG. And last summer, yes, they went around and spent some money, but was it really money well spent with regards to the way we wanted to build the squad? Because how many times throughout the season did we say it looks like they haven't got a clue what to do with Isak? It looks like they don't know that we need pace. It looks like they aren't going to replace the defensive midfielder. And we assumed this was all going to be done in this window. But look, I've been around transfer windows long enough to know that the way this looks like it's going to pan out is we'll get a couple more and then we'll get excuses. And I'm fed up of excuses as a Liverpool fan, especially when the clubs in and around us are moving big, spending big money. And we're just, are we even standing still? I don't know. We've got a new head coach in, and you would think that you want to support this guy and you give him the players as early as possible. And we have 11 days, ladies and gents, till the lads start returning back for pre-season training. 11 days. Now, of course, that doesn't include the guys at the World Cup or the guys who went out of the World Cup earlier. They still have to have the holidays and they'll come back staggered stages. But that's when pre-season starts for us. 11 days. And I know we're focused on the World Cup as fans, but not every footballer's at the World Cup. Not every footballer's nation qualified for the World Cup. It just all feels a little bit like this is getting messy and they're scrambling around behind the scenes trying to sort it out. Stevie Boy said, so it seems that I will sit through the coming season hoping VVD, Bradley, Isak stay fit. I mean, we're used to that at this point, Stevie Boy, right? I mean, imagine me saying to you, mate, with a straight face that Ian Doyle was going to write a piece that suggested that Liverpool might not even go into the right-back market because of Conor Bradley and Frimpong. I mean, that's what landed us in the mess last season. But again, we're supposed to believe as Liverpool fans, be eternal optimists and think that nobody ever gets an injury. We were blessed last year, absolutely blessed that that Virgil van Dijk was bulletproof and was able to play the games that he did, because one more centre-back injury last season and that was it. We wouldn't be having Champions League football for this season. And you think to yourself, well, surely to God, they'll realise they got away with one there and work hard to put it right. But here we are now, windows open 3 weeks. I would have expected a few deals done at this point, and it seems like the only deal that we did get done only got done because Newcastle were just about to sign a player and Liverpool decided, okay, we best move quickly. And again, that doesn't really scream strategic planning to me. Don't shoot the messenger. I won't, Rook, I promise you. Bradley Barcola, future open from Romano 22 minutes ago, quoted his tweet from 28th of the 6th. Maybe things will heat up now. So, right, let's talk about Barcola for a second, right? Actually, sorry, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Asantino for gifting 10 memberships. Thank you, bro. Really kind of you. So let's look at that, Rook, right, and say, okay, let's say he is potentially available. Well, how is this going to play out? PSG, we've already been told by many journalists, if they are going to sell Barcola, well, they're going to want £116 million upwards to sell him. So that's what, 135, 140 million euro? Do you think we're going to pay that for Bradley Barcola? I mean, I'd be surprised. And also, he's not a naturally right-sided player. So I'm not saying nobody can shift to the right. I mean, I've made the argument many times that I don't really think we need to focus on inverted wingers all the time. But it just feels a bit like I've been here before. I've seen this movie play out. It ends up in glorious failure and excuses and a promise of a brighter future. Do you get me? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a pessimist. Maybe I am. But that's what it feels like here. You know, it feels like, oh, we'll throw around Barcola's name for the whole summer, but it'll be on PSG's terms when it suits them. And then we'll have to cram in. And then we'll have to hear about the fact that, well, he was at the World Cup, so he won't settle in for the first 3 months of the season. And then when he doesn't settle in, it'll take a little bit longer for him to get used to it. And then before we know it, half the season's gone again. Which is why it's important that we get the guys in as early as possible. And look, with Barcola, in that particular instance, there isn't really any getting him sooner than the World Cup ending. And you would imagine France will go deep into that. But ultimately, mate, if we ended the window with Barcola, I would be happy. Yeah, of course I would. I would. But I'd still want somebody else for the right-hand side because I still think we'd be short. Now, I have my doubts about Cody Gakpo staying. Personally, I just do. I don't believe that that many stories out there talking about it potentially wanting to move away if there wasn't something to it. So I think maybe we'll hear a bit more on that situation over the next few weeks. Of course, Cody and his partner have a lot to be dealing with at the minute, and I understand they deserve a well-earned break, some time together, and to do what they need to do. But I don't know. I just feel a little bit deflated. What was that? You deflated, Chubby? Hang on now. I don't know. I'm trying to put a smile on, but inside I'm really angry. And I'm an angry dude. So, you know, maybe it's just me, like I keep saying. Hughes must be gone to a Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck League. That's what the Saudi League is. I mean, I really don't get it. You know, I really don't get it. Look, maybe I'm naive here, but Liverpool should be the pinnacle of this man's career as a sporting director. You know, there aren't many bigger clubs in world football. And to feel like he doesn't want to even stick around and see this out, it rings alarm bells in my head for a couple of reasons. One, what is the reason we go through so many sporting directors? Like, is it because FSG are notoriously cheap or difficult to work with? Is it because inside the club isn't as, I don't know, free-flowing and happy as we would like to think as fans? Something just doesn't feel right about it. And at the moment, our ship, the good ship Liverpool, feels a little bit rudderless and a little bit directionless. That's how I feel at the minute. I don't know. I'm optimistic on Areola being in as coach, and I'm optimistic we'll be better than next season. Of course, I'm absolutely very confident we'll be much better than last season. But it still doesn't fill me full of confidence that we're going to do what we need to do to get the job done properly. because we want to give the new head coach the best possible platform to go out there and succeed. And I just don't know what's going on with the constant churn at sporting director, and the real lack of activity. And then there's stuff starting to come out talking about maybe midfield targets not being gone after until we move on some players that we don't even know if they're leaving yet. There's just a lot about this that feels uneasing or unnerving. Dave said, Craig, I think Areola can make players better. We don't need the biggest signings. Dave, I don't know if you were with us last night, bro. Forgive me, my memory's not great. But last night I said exactly that. I'm not expecting superstar signings, Dave. I'm absolutely happy to go out there and get players, like you said, that Andoni Areola can improve, and he will. So for me, it's a numbers game this summer, Dave. I just want to make sure that we get the right back, we get the centre back, we get the left back, we get the DM, and we get the winger. And what we don't get is excuses. But absolutely, I'm open-minded to that. My own preference on Yakuba Minta is that I don't think he's good enough. I'd probably prefer Pedro Neto over Yakuba Minta. But again, Pedro Neto feels like that's another potential injury headache down the road. But I don't know. I've seen a couple of posts saying that there was a big drop-off in targets. There was. But that was always going to be the risk for us, wasn't it, this summer? We did know if we didn't get Yan Diamonde, after that, it wasn't exactly a very abundant market for right wingers. Sagan, how are you, dude? Richard Hughes not going until the window done feels like a conflict of interest. The way he's moved over the last number of years feels like he's gaming the system. It's a weird one, isn't it? Like, I've always said, Sagan, that I never believe anybody whose future isn't with you is giving you 100% mentally, whether it's a player or anybody else. And everybody will always say these guys are professionals, but I really don't care. I want people who want to be at Liverpool Football Club. I want people who are happy to be working at the club every day. I want people coming into the club who want to make the club better and want to create a legacy, a dynasty, their own era. Not a 3-year cycle so we can fuck off to Saudi. The whole thing stinks. And it stunk from the minute I found out that Hughes and Edwards signed those 3-year deals and they seem to have no impetus or desire to extend them. Like, something just feels off about this. Like, no other club I'm aware of, really, maybe outside of two of the Mad Basket Case clubs, has gone through the amount of sporting directors that we're going through. Paul said, I'm panicking. We don't get good players right now. It's not even, like, as I said, Paul, I'm open to some of these guys being, like Munoz. Victor Munoz, to me, that's a good signing. Good value, good profile, good age, good experience. That ticks a lot of boxes for me. So I'm absolutely not sitting here saying we have to go out there, sign Michael Elise. We have to go out there. We just have to get moving. Because if there's one thing I would say we would all agree on, no matter whether you're calm about the transfer window or not, is that the more time we can give Andoni Areola with these players, the better. And it seems like that should be the aim when the window opens, to get the majority of your business done as soon as possible to give the manager time to work with them. Because we're already going to be working with a shortened window of opportunity from the coach to the players. Sarah's like Mane, scored many times, will be around 50 million, and Bowen for 60 million, a player who can play any role. So the Sarr thing is an interesting one, Jason. Somebody mentioned his name last night in the chat. Now, I'm not saying we've interest in him or not, haven't got a clue, not seen his name mentioned, but we could do worse. We could absolutely do worse. He scores goals. He's a handful. He works hard. He's fast. He's direct. His goal for Senegal last night, top notch as well. So, yeah, not a bad show. But, the only thing, and again, this is why I keep going back to this, the only thing for me is just, we need to get somebody has to be brought in. The hypotheticals need to stop. We need activity. We need to get it done. Look at Spurs. They've got 5 signings in or 6 signings in already into this window. Dom said, Neto is the exact type of profile we need for the squad. 50 million, get it done. Players like him and Sarr shouldn't be scoffed at. That doesn't mean they're Salah's replacement. But who is Salah's replacement though, Dom? And that's the big question. And you're right, by the way. I do agree with the sentiment of what you said, my man. We shouldn't be scoffing at some of the names. But we do need the Salah replacement. And I feel like this is a repeat of last window, where we went into it as fans knowing that we needed a centre forward. Of course we did. But we also needed a DM. And that never came. And I don't like... Everybody acknowledged going into this summer's window that replacing Mohamed Salah was the aim. That was the goal. That was priority number one. We haven't done that. Not yet. So if it's priority number one and it hasn't been done yet, that's a concern. And then, of course, we have to acknowledge that we got played by Rock Nation Sports, that we got done up like a kipper there. And it all just starts to look a little bit more amateurish. And again, that's before a sporting director is fucking off to Saudi with his factor 50. Dave said, Craig, I like Nusa, but would Leipzig lose Diamonde and Nusa? Well, they haven't lost Diamonde yet, Dave. And somebody said this yesterday, and I said it wouldn't be the worst idea to go there and try and get Nusa out, and then let it be PSG's problem whether they can get Barcola, or whether they can get Diamonde or not. Because I actually think you'd be more likely to get them to sell Nusa over Diamonde. But as I've always said, I'd be really, really surprised if both go in the window. So why not go in and try and get him? What harm could it do? He's a good winger. He can operate off either side. Good age profile. Doing well at the World Cup. Obviously, he came through a model there at Leipzig that we know produces good and well-coached players. So why not try? Trying is better than just sitting around doing nothing. And I know, as Colette, I think it was, said earlier on, maybe things are happening behind the scenes. Perhaps, but it's also a leap of faith to just say maybe they are. Drew, how are you, my man? Said, perfectly fine not getting big name signings. Iriola, like Klopp, excels are making fair under the radar signings. I'd make those transfers. And I'm absolutely open to those as a fan, Drew. I promise you. I actually enjoy those signings. I enjoy the Andy Robertsons of this world. I enjoy the signings like Victor Munoz. They really get me excited because you can see the potential of these guys. And yet, I agree with what you said, Drew. Andoni Iraola will improve them as he has done with most of the players he's worked with. That's why I keep saying it's a numbers game this summer. We have to fill out the squad. And I think personally, folks, when we're talking about the positions that we need strengthening in, I think that's before we build out the squad. I think that's just to get us back to parity. And then we need to make sure that we have quality backups in the positions we're discussing. So I read something on Anfield Watch earlier on that I have to say I can only describe as nonsense. Without all due respect to Anfield Watch, I read something that I'm trying to make out like now could be the time for Chiesa to come good, and that maybe Andoni Iraola will trust them. And just stop it, lads. He's not good enough. Let's draw a line there. He's not good enough, and he doesn't want to be here. So we need to stop with this, trying to convince ourselves that things that haven't worked in the past are now suddenly going to work. Let's draw a line under it. It's going through these same mistakes over and over again every season that has got us into this position. We're now 2 years into the experiment with Chiesa, 2 years of very limited football, and 2 years of him not working for us, but costing, 140,000, 150,000 pounds a week. That just doesn't make any sense. And banging your head against the wall over and over again is not going to change the situation. Telling us Costas is suddenly good enough at left back. I actually thought there'd be way more anger towards that than there has been. That's just lazy. To go, the lad that we didn't think was good enough is all of a sudden good enough. Come on back in and be the backup. Fuck, that's not good enough. So I also read today that Spurs could spend another £250 million and still not have any issues. Which, you wonder what the number could be that Liverpool could potentially spend if FSG actually had a bit of an appetite to win. Mr. A. Santino said, I wonder if this gives Iraola more power and he brings in somebody that he has a personal relationship with in Spain. This feels like Benitez again. So one thing about Andoni Iraola, and you can research this yourself, you don't have to take my word for it, he doesn't really like to get involved in that side of things. Genuinely, there's a few articles written about this. He likes to just stick to the coaching side of it. And of course, he'll have to have a relationship with the sporting director. And you would need a rough profile of the type of players for a system, of course. But he's not arsed about going in and sorting out the transfers. He just wants to coach players on the training ground. And that's brilliant. But, you know, it does, again, strike me as a bit worrying that the guy who brought him into the club is also just disappearing in a few months. And, you know, we still don't know what the plan is there. There's a lot FSG, I think, need to start being a little bit more proactive or upfront on. While we're just talking about this, though, I want to just pause for a minute to say I want to congratulate the club on the wonderful memorial to Diogo and Andre that was unveiled today. Obviously, it's the anniversary of both of their passing tomorrow, and the club officially unveiled the sculpture outside Anfield, and it's magnificent. It's really, really well done, and the sculptor did an amazing job. The design is brilliant, and I'm sure it'll be something that Liverpool fans will come and pay their respects to, or visiting fans will come and pay their respects to for many, many, many years to come. So well done to the club on that one. Really good job all around, and a very fitting and personal tribute to Diogo and Andre. Derek said, Craig, is there any news on Kevin from Fulham? The only thing was, I think it was, we talked yesterday, Anfield sector, if I'm right, said that Liverpool hold an interest in him. And they're not wrong. They are not wrong. Liverpool do hold an interest. Now, I don't know whether that interest will lead to a bid or an offer. You know, looking at Kevin, he plays more off the left-hand side as well. So you are, you know, asking yourself, is maybe Rio going to shift to the right or something like that if he came in? But I could also sit here and tell you about interest Liverpool having 50 players. But, you know, it's the interest getting to the point where maybe we knock on the door or we send the email out inquiring. You know, I can't say, maybe Anfield sector have more information on that, but I couldn't say, you know, if we follow through on it. Carbon said, to be honest, Craig, I think we have the players that can handle the right wing, like Dom, Elliott. See, I have to stop you right there. What was the thing that we said we needed that we were lacking in last year? The answer is pace. And the examples that you've given there maybe can do a job on the right, but they're not quick enough. You know, Szoboszlai isn't the right winger. Harvey Elliott isn't the right winger. He may have played there before Elliott, but he's not going to be a right winger for us because he hasn't got the pace. And he's also going to be leaving the club most likely, unfortunately. So we're just walking ourselves into the same problem we had last year. We need pace. We just do. And, you know, we've tried every solution on the right-hand side when Salah wasn't doing well. Nothing worked. So to say that we have the solutions from within, you can coach pace. And Donny Iraola will be able to improve a lot of players, but he won't be able to make them much faster. You either have that naturally or you don't. And we don't have enough of that. So I would disagree, mate, on the possibilities of filling the role from within, because I just don't think they're there. Anyway, to finish a comment you said, which I think he could do better as a CAM, and we have the youngster from the academy that can step up. But we don't have anybody to step up from the academy. Like, who do we have from the academy? You know, we've Joshua Abe, who's 15, so we shouldn't even be thinking about him for a year and a half or 2 years. We've got Kumas, and look, with all due respect, we don't know whether Kumas is going to make the grade or not. He has every chance. But I just think that's a bit fanciful and a bit overly optimistic without any real substance to it. Not being disrespectful to you, that's just my genuine opinion on the idea of playing Dominic Szoboszlai right wing. It just doesn't work for me. And it won't work for us because, again, we just don't have the pace. You know, we're going to come up against the same low blocks that we did last year. And we didn't have the solutions last year, and we weren't able to find the solutions last year. And we tried lots of different systems, lots of different people, and lots of different roles, but we still end up with the same frustrations. Chad said, hey, Craig, hope you're well. Feels a bit like the ridiculousness carried over from last season. Why do they always wait until the last days? I really don't know. That's something that fascinates me, Chad, about all clubs and transfer business, particularly in January. the amount of stuff that comes down to the last minute, it is crazy when you think about, the amounts of money involved and the size of these companies. I don't get it. You should be getting it done ASAP. Like, you've got, let's say, we didn't do that in January really, so we've had 9 months to plan this. And where's the plan that's been exercised? Missed out on Diamande because you can't read the situation correctly. And then not only do we miss out on Diamande, but the next one on your list is Bradley Barcola. And Bradley Barcola is a PSG player, and that will be done on their terms as and when they see fit for a price that makes them happy. So, I don't know. It all feels weird, Chad, like you said. And where's the continuity in all of this? In the sporting director role, in the decision making? It all just feels a little bit like we're going out of our way to go into a spiral of headaches for years. And some of this should be just called out. It just should be. Like, this is fucking ridiculous that we're in this position with the sporting director again. Mason said, what do you think about England leaving it late last night, and how far do you think they will go? I thought Harry Kane's goals were really good. The second one in particular I thought was absolutely phenomenal. And look, if you were playing Mexico outside of Mexico, I think you'd win the game. But playing Mexico at the Azteca, 7,000 feet above sea level, when they've lost 2 games in 89, not lost in the last 10, I just don't see England winning that game. I just think Mexico will have too much with regards to energy and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't think England get past that game, in all honesty. If they do, though, and I mean this sincerely, if they do, that should be a huge confidence boost for them, because they're not going to come into many more difficult environments than the Azteca with the, situation they're walking into, with the fans in there, with Mexico's record in there. I think the last time England played in that stadium was the quarter-final in 1986. It was the Diego Maradona Hand of God game. So, yeah, it's a tough one. And it would be tough for anybody. This isn't an England thing. I mean, geez, you could stick any team in there playing Mexico at that environment, and it would be tough. Eddie said, I don't think we sign anybody else. Oh, I don't know, Eddie. Oh. It'd be one surefire way to get people angry. I can say that much, my man, but I don't know. Surely we have to sign a few more. Yeah, even in my pickiest, darkest moments, I couldn't imagine we don't make any more signings this summer. That just feels... Yeah, they surely know they wouldn't get away with that. What's this one? Mokram said, hey Craig, hope you and yours are well. Thank you, my friend. Same to you. Do you think Iriola could get a tune out of Darwin on the right? No, because Darwin's shit. And we just got to own that, We can't keep having these hypothetical conversations about a Darwin that was a different Darwin. He's gotten worse since he's left Liverpool, and he absolutely stunk the gaff up at the World Cup with Uruguay. And there's not exactly a whole host of clubs out there trying to sign him. So no, I don't. I think we don't need to give ourselves that potential frustration again. Right, on the Richard Hughes thing, I asked, are you concerned about Richard Hughes leaving his role as sporting director? Wow, this is crazy. So 61% said no. I'd love to know your reasoning, folks. Please do let me know why you're not concerned about Richard Hughes leaving his role as sporting director, because I'm absolutely bricking it. Wow, you've shocked me with that one, because, how many times do we get told that in this modern football ecosystem, in the modern structure of clubs, the sporting director role is an incredibly important one. But yet we're not worried that we're losing yet another one. I don't know, it has me worried. I'm obviously in the minority then, but it definitely has me worried. And it has me worried with the amount we've gone through over the last few years. And it has me worried that the contract situation has been allowed to get to what it is with so many players. And again, we're staring down the barrel of maybe letting up to 6 more go for free next summer. That concerns me. I'm not worried because he sucks. I would argue that if you're not worried because he's shit, you should be even more worried then. Because the decision makers that brought him in are still there. And, you know, and I'm all up for the idea that maybe he hasn't done the job well enough. I don't really want to debate with people on that. If you have that opinion, that's fair enough. But I don't know, like that was, you know, what's next? Likelihood is probably somebody promoted from within again, in the same structure. And I'd love to hear we brought in a sporting director, signed a 5-year contract, and is going to stay at the club to see out minimum that 5 years, go through 2 cycles, hopefully stay for longer. But I'd love to hear the words from a new sporting director to say, I'm at Liverpool Football Club now. This has been the culmination of all my work to get to this point. I'm at one of the biggest clubs in world football. I plan to make this an era that Liverpool remembers, Liverpool fans remember, one that is laden full of success and ambition. You know, that's what I'd love to hear. That meme guy said, get me Rayan for the hype signing on the Areola. Oh, mate, I'm the same. Bang down 75, 80 million quid on the table and offer Rayan, offer Bournemouth that money for Rayan. That would be my absolute day one dream scenario, to come in and do that. You answered your own question, Craig. He's not been doing his job by letting players go on a free. Respectfully, though, Philip, of all the things I will call Richard Hughes out for, I actually don't think that's his fault. I think my anger towards the contract situations is squarely at the feet of FSG, because they allowed a situation where we had a floating sporting director, if you want to call it that, in George Smatka, somebody who was only really in to help get deals sorted out, and the club took their eyes off the ball. So I've always been consistent in saying that anything on the football pitch, I think, comes down to the coach, and anything with regards to the structure of the club, those in executive positions, that responsibility lies with FSG. And if we're not feeling happy or fulfilled that those roles are being done correctly, that's on the owners. Tipsy Pirate said, hey Craig, I've been away, like the new studio. Thank you. Did you get the sofas and dartboard for the new studio? Is it possible to see more photos? Good luck. Yeah, there's definitely a possibility of a lot more photos, my friend. Yeah, I've had some health issues that I haven't been able to talk about on camera that have sidetracked me a little bit in recent times. So I haven't been able to even put together all the stuff that I would have liked to show you the studio properly. But yeah, I will definitely work on it, my man. And thank you for dropping in, as always. I hope you're well. Liz said, please sign some players ASAP. I feel like, Liz, maybe my frustration is rubbing off on you a little bit. Right, let's get into some news anyway, folks. So let me just run through some of the stories for you here today. So this report from Mark Bruss and Caught Offside said Liverpool are keeping an eye on the situation of Barcelona defender Jules Koundé. Now, what I didn't have for you guys yesterday was a number. You know, we talked before about Liverpool having an interest in Jules Koundé, but we never had a number really in the conversation. This report today said that Barcelona are open to his exit this summer, and he could be on the market for 55 million quid. So for the next question, I'd like to know, should Liverpool pay 55 million quid for Jules Koundé? So one sec. So, should we pay 55 million for Koundé? Yes or no? So let me give you my side of this one. I'm very much in the yes camp for a few reasons. I've said to you guys for a while now that we need somebody in the prime of their career, ready to come in defence to help out the young centre-backs. So every faith in the future of Jeremy Jacquet and Giovanni Leone. Really excited to see these two guys blossom in a Liverpool shirt. But we absolutely have to bring in somebody that can lead that defence if Virgil isn't on the pitch or when Virgil leaves in a year's time. And that's, by the way, assuming a year's time, because there's more reports today of other clubs interested in him, and we'll touch on that in a minute. Well, for me, I don't know the possibility of Liverpool doing this, but I would pay 55 million quid for Jules Koundé tomorrow, because he can come in, he can play right back or right centre back. He is more than capable of doing a good job there. And with the situation maybe with Schlotterbeck being up in the air about whether he'll be able to get a move this summer because of the injury that he has and stuff like that, I think this could be a very good solution, and it could kind of fall into that hybrid category that we spoke about before, where a player can, cover in two different positions. And also with Giovanni Leone, we have to really acknowledge and be honest about it. He's not going to be great at the start, perfectly naturally, because he's coming back after a really long time away. And any player would tell you that after an injury like that, it takes a while for them to get back up to speed in a game, trust their body again, all these kind of things. So I think it's only fair that we should assume we have to give Giovanni a little bit of time to get his footing again and, feel comfortable out there on the pitch. So I don't want us to be in a situation where we're maybe having to rush him back in because we need to rest somebody or rotate somebody. And then we have to talk about Jeremy Jacquet, who's a young man himself, 20 years of age. He's coming into the Premier League, for the first time, and he seems a very confident lad. Statistically looks really good. Think he'll be a good success as well. But I just, again, feel like everything with us, it's the bare minimum. The bare minimum we think we can possibly get away with to go through a season. And it never feels like we all had many conversations about why we think Arsenal won the league last year, and whether you think it's the set piece stuff, whether you think it's the way the Premier League changed, whether you think it was the consistency of the performance. We can all sit here and say that they built that squad out, and when they needed a replacement in a position, they had 2 or 3 options, and those 2 or 3 options were good options. We don't have that. We had last season Arne looking at a bench that he didn't want to play half the players on. And now we've got another situation where Salah's after leaving us, and we all knew, every single one of us, that number one priority was right wing. And we made a mess of that. And now we're scrambling around trying to justify players that, if I asked you 6 weeks ago about, we'd all be saying, I don't know. Paying the buyout for Ryan in this market seems the way to recover. You can't. There is no buyout for Ryan in this market. His contract only contains a buyout clause that becomes active in January. So look, you could absolutely throw your money on the table and try to negotiate with them. And sure, you could offer it, or you could tell them, look, we're already going to offer it to you now, but we're going to do it in January. But you can't trigger that clause till January, to the best of my understanding anyway. That 130 million quid clause becomes active in January. I was gifted a membership. Thank you. Very kind of you, sir. And I think it was Mr. Acentino probably that was gifting it to you, but kind of you. George, how are you? Hi, Craig, on the chat. Thank you for the Macca shirt. Oh, yes, George was the winner of the signed Alexis McAllister shirt, by the way. We're going to be announcing our July giveaway soon. We're just chatting with our friends at the Collector's Corner, trying to figure out what we think the best giveaway prize would be. And George went on to say, thank you for the Macca shirt so much, really appreciate it. Thank you, I can't wait for it. Sorry I'm late. Don't be silly, George. You enjoy your time up in Edinburgh, my friend. And pleasure, George. It's a pleasure, mate. It was funny when Connor said to me he'd won it. I thought, that'll be a nice one. George has won it. Keep up your amazing work. Love your videos. Thank you, Mark. That's so kind of you. I have to say, I had a bit of fun on the video earlier on today. I actually finished that video smiling at the end of it when I got off it. I enjoyed a little bit of sarcasm, and I love taking the piss. It just feels natural. Right, sorry, I was trying to catch up in the chat with a few comments. What do we think, by the way, about this from the DFB, the German Football Federation? So Florian Plettenberg said, breaking, Julian Nagelsmann has today been advised by the DFB to consider stepping down. If he does not resign, current plan is to dismiss him. He remains in charge for now, final decision still pending. Nagelsmann had the opportunity today to explain the reasons behind Germany's World Cup failure. Decision expected soon, process currently independent of Jurgen Klopp. It feels like this is the right time for Jurgen. I have to say it does. If he is to have another crack at a managerial role, I really would love to see him go in there to the German national team and try to restore them back to where, you know, they have been over the last 30, 40 years in world football. And I think he'd be the man to do it. Chad, any interest in Yakuba Minta, 60 million euros, young and talented? Oh, yes. There's 100% interest in Yakuba Minta. I'm not sure on that price tag, to be honest with you, Chad. I don't think you're getting him out for, what's that, £50 million maybe? Thereabouts. I don't know if Brighton would sell at that number, but 100% there's interest. He's been on every list of potential backup options that I've seen from any journalist or any publication. His name has always been there. Fernandez Pardo's always been there. El Mala's always been there. And a couple of others. But yeah, I just personally don't think he's good enough. Now, if he came in after a big signing in the wing, or somebody who I actually think is ready now on the wing, then I'd be fine about it. But as the guy on the right, I don't know. I could be on my own on this one, but I just don't think he's good enough. And he can't even establish himself in the Brighton team. People saying push Rio to right wing, know nothing about football. Well, let me just tell you, Wes, why you're a dickhead. Firstly, Wes, by your own statement, you know nothing about football. But, you know, we'll push that to one side because, you know, you thought you could come in and shout down everybody. I played football at a pretty fucking high level, mate. And as a former goalkeeper come left winger myself, I can tell you that playing with your natural foot on your natural side is not a fucking problem. The world has a hard-on, Wes, for inverted wingers these days. And people that grew up playing FIFA and never kicking a ball in their life but think they can come on and shout down other people and come out with ridiculous statements like yours deserve the scrutiny that your stupid statement's about to get. He can absolutely switch to the right wing. And if you're looking at what we need from wingers coming up, and before I finish this comment, let me just ban you because you're a dickhead. Let me just finish off what I was saying. We need wingers at the minute to put the ball in the 6-yard box for Isak to put the ball in the back of the net. We don't need wingers trying to score Cody Gakpo worldies from cutting in onto their foot, running all the way across the edge of the 18-yard box till they finally get a shot away, only for it to either hit a defender, take 7 ricochets, or fly into the stands. What we do need is somebody who can run at a fullback and play the ball across the 6-yard box. And forgive me, but a right-footed player on the right side is pretty basic. You know, when we're talking about fullbacks, do we want inverted fullbacks, or are we happy to have a left footer playing left back and a right footer playing right back? So the next time you try to be a smart arse and come into a chat to shout down people, pretend you have a bit of knowledge before you start your waffle. And again, we always talk about this, but respect is a minimum. You don't have to agree with everybody, but you do have to show them respect. Craig, what's going on with Alexis? Does it look like he's going to leave? I'd love to see him under Iraola. I think he's class. So the honest answer is, it's kind of a two-part answer. Part one would be, I think he leaves. And a lot of people think the same way. But there is a part two to it. And the part two is, and it seems like such an obvious one, for us to sell the player, there has to be a buyer. And that's the part where at the moment, mate, I don't know of any active buyers in the market looking to come in to buy him. Now, something may come up. It doesn't look like it's going to be Real Madrid, at this point, you know, because they seem to have irons in the fire in other areas that they want to bring into that position. I wonder maybe would you see something from Atletico, but that's hypothetical. So I think if an offer came in, it's possible. And, when you get to this point, 2 years to go on your deal, usually that's when you start hearing the conversations about extensions. But you've heard from Macca's own camp that those conversations hadn't been forthcoming. Now, I can tell you categorically that Liverpool have at least started the process with Dominic Szoboszlai of letting them know, they're ready to start negotiations. But when you hear Macca's dad coming out and saying that to this point, two things really stood out to me actually when Macca's dad spoke in a few interviews. One of them was, we haven't spoken publicly with any other clubs yet. The word publicly in there concerned me. And then there was, of course, the part of there'd be no contract negotiations yet. So I don't know, mate, is the honest answer. But I think we're all happy if Macca stays, if we get the old Macca back. I guess the question for me would be, which version of Alexis McAllister are we going to see at Liverpool this year? Are we going to have an Alexis McAllister that will be a bit burnt out because of a really long season again, Argentina, the World Cup, going deep into that? Or are we going to get the Macca that we got when we signed him from Brighton? Because that Macca, I think we all love. But last year, it's hard to know as a fan whether that was an anomaly or, whether that's the new normal. Who do you think wins between Norway and Brazil? Oh, God, what's really intrigued me, Tobias, about Brazil in this tournament so far had been they seem to respond to setbacks quite well and with a level of intensity, and their play speeds up. So it's going to be an intriguing one. I think I probably just about edge Brazil in it, but it's going to be a fascinating game and one I'm very much looking forward to, bro. And, Norway certainly have the capabilities to have a go at them and potentially get a result, because Norway have, again, shown a very, very good togetherness, a very good bond, and they look well coached. Yeah, it's intriguing. But look, hey, I know you're from Norway, mate, but this is the dream, right? World Cup, knockout stages, Brazil. I wish you guys all the best, but as a neutral, I'm certainly going to be watching. Jesse said next season won't be a great season, but I think we'll see what next few seasons have to offer. I don't know really what the expectation is, mate, for me for next season. I would say wouldn't be unexpected if we had some teething problems at the start, and that's okay. I just hope that as the season goes on, and I think it will, we'll see progression, and we'll see Iraola's methods becoming something the players get more used to. And then my hope would be that, when we get into the second half of the season, that we can go deeper into the Champions League. Because if you peak at the right time, you still have a really good season. The league might be, if you don't get off to a good start in the league, it is tough. But if you're talking FA Cup, League Cup, Champions League, some of those competitions are just about peaking at the right time. And Paris Saint-Germain have been a great example of that in the Champions League over the last few years. They've not made the top 8 in the 2 years that they've won it. They've had to play that extra round of games again. Yes, by the way, they are helped by the French Federation, but that's not something I think we should be knocking. I think it's more something that we should be asking, why the fuck aren't the English FA doing more or the Premier League doing more to help their teams out? So, yeah, for me, it's about progression as the season goes on, and hopefully there at the end of the year. I'm certainly not expecting them to come in and win the league in year one, but, if we can be in the Champions League positions and then we get into the knockout stages after Christmas, anything's possible. Players will be rested. We don't have some awful squad. We just have to fill our holes, which we too often neglect. I don't think the players will be rested, though. And it's not just a Liverpool problem, by the way. I think this is just a problem across football. I mean, give you an example. Let's talk about, right, as an example, let's use Enzo Fernandez, just for a minute as an example. So he played the season before with Chelsea, went straight into the Club World Cup, had a shortened summer, came back in, played another season with Chelsea, has just gone to the World Cup, will play the World Cup, probably go quite deep with Argentina, and then come back into another season again, whether that's in La Liga or the Premier League. So I would say what we'll see this season from a lot of players is probably an increase in injuries again. Um, and I agree with the second half of your statement entirely. We do need to build out the squad because, if we have good backups, well, you can help prevent injury by rotating more often as well. So what I do hope is that Andoni does give everybody a fresh start and does look at them and think, fair enough, let's see what you can do. And if he does that, I think a few people will surprise him. Paul, good night to you, mate. Appreciate your time as always, sir. Alan said, why don't we go for Bowen? Hope you're well, Craig. So, my take, Alan. I love Jarrod Bowen, and I'd love Liverpool to try and sign him. It's not a name that I've really heard come up behind the scenes. There was a couple of clubs interested in him. Bournemouth's name was in the mix with him. But I might be wrong on this, and forgive me if I am. But I think it was either Fulham or Forest that were interested in Bowen recently. Or maybe it was Villa. I just know that there was somebody else that was interested in him. But I've not really seen our name in the mix. And I think he'd be a really good short-term signing that would allow Joshua Abe, as an example, to get a couple of more years under his belt, allow Rio to continue progressing, give us the experience that we probably don't have on that right-hand side in attack. And then maybe, bring in another player. Maybe it's a Minta, maybe it's a Rayan, maybe it's a Fernandez Pardo. So the answer is, Alan, I don't really know, mate, but I would be very much happy to see Jarrod Bowen at Liverpool for the right price, of course. Mitro said, hey, Craig, have you seen what Barcola said today? I haven't, mate. No, sorry, I haven't. Care to fill me in? Nobody did say, because sorry, I don't know what he said, but for what it's worth, I do think when Romano says that he might move, I don't think Romano's lying. Now, we can talk about, are they engineering a move or trying to engineer a situation, but I think just looking at it logically, if you're him and you're already, probably second fiddle to Doué at one point, and then you see that they're going after Yan Diamonde, and they want Yan Diamonde, and they want Akliouche. I mean, I know they moved Kang Leon out, and I know that Gonzalo Ramos has gone to AC Milan, but you're still going to be asking, am I going to get enough game time there? And he's having an incredibly good World Cup, so so I don't know what he said. He said he's not worried about his future and is focused on the World Cup. I mean, that's a perfectly acceptable professional answer. Muslim said, I know he has an ACL, but in January could be an interesting buy. It would be just silly though, mate, because you're not going to have him for, I don't know who you're talking about, but I'm assuming it's probably Rodrigo. In which case, January will just be when he gets back to playing football, but you could easily go another 6 months. So you're probably losing a whole season of this season before Rodrigo, if that's who you're talking about, even gets back to anything resembling what you'd need. And then on top of that, you'd be paying a pretty hefty wage there for that year as well. So it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. And I would be somebody who would have said Rodrigo would be a decent shout, but I just don't think you signed a player that has an ACL. Not until you see that player back, fully fit, playing again, and you can get a better read on what impact it had. Brad said, really hoping Portugal win against Croatia tomorrow in honour of Jota as it marks the 1 year anniversary since his passing. I think I fancy them to get past Croatia. It'll be an interesting one. Obviously, like you've said, 1 year anniversary of Andre and Diogo's passing. And the club, of course, put the sculpture, unveiled it today. Beautiful sculpture, really lovely piece of art, and a fitting gesture from the club as well. Roger said, Richie's had his eyes on money elsewhere for months. Should have been fired before this window and a new director in. So, Roger, I am fully on board with that because I'm that petty. And if I knew somebody in my institution didn't want to be here and wanted to be elsewhere, gone, adios, off you pop. Because, if we're being told now that, let's say, Julian Ward, just for a name, can step into the role after this summer, well, then why couldn't he do it now? Why are we even allowing Richard Hughes to dictate this process? So I'm with you, Roger. I would have fired him as well. And I can tell you, there are a lot of people in our industry that think similarly. I'm worried our club is becoming dysfunctional. I can understand that concern. So I seen a tweet from David Lynch earlier on, and I mentioned it in my video earlier on today, and I fully agree with what David said in it. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, we kind of have to get rid of this myth that sporting directors are a long-term project, because we're always told that the modern structure needs them and how important the role is. But he did say, and I agree with him, we have to stop this nonsense that it's their long-term appointments, because they're not. A lot of them across football aren't staying in their roles for a very prolonged period, 2-3 years usually, and they're off. So if there's such an important role in the club, they shouldn't have that much turnover. I would rather have somebody who maybe doesn't have the contact book, but will build it and will be there and wants to do something at the club. I don't think it's unfair as a fan to think idealistically that anybody who comes into the club, we want players. We often say we want players that want to wear the liverbird. We want players that want to play for Liverpool. They shouldn't have to be talked into coming to Liverpool. We say these things about players. I would say the very same thing about an equally important appointment, which is a sporting director. I want Richard Hughes to come through the door as sporting director and go, oh my God, this is Liverpool Football Club. Have you seen all the fucking trophies? Oh my God. There's the This Is Anfield. Oh my God. That's what I want. And I am going to do everything in my power to create an era at this football club that I can look back on and tell my grandchildren that Grandad was part of this, and this is the culmination of my life's work, and this is where I dreamt about being. Not, I'm in for 3 years, lads, and then I'm fucking off for a big tax-free payday over in Saudi with Al Hilal. That just doesn't feel right to me. Who are your right-wing choices, Craig? Not Bowen. I love a bit of Tommy Robinson. I'm joking, and I don't. You just said right-wing, and I wanted to be a sarcastic asshole, so sorry. Rayan. That's it now for me. That's the only name on my list. It's a short one. Just go get me Rayan. That's it. Go bang that money down on the table, the hypothetical money, because you wouldn't really be banging 75 mil down on the table, would you? It'd be a big thing to lift. But yeah, Rayan, that's it. Rayan, and then I'm absolutely open to somebody else, whether it be a Minta, whether it be a Fernandez Pardo, Almala. Just get me the big sexy signing. I want the Mohamed Salah replacement without expecting them to deliver the amount of goals and assists. So to go back to the comment from the dude earlier on that was talking about you guys being idiots because, how dare you think that a left-footed player could play on the left-hand wing and a right-footed player on the right-foot wing. I would argue that's kind of what we need now. We always say football is cyclical. I think that the era of the inverted winger has become too predominant. Not that there couldn't be an inverted winger. You could maybe carry one inverted winger, one natural winger. But I think the era of having to have a right-footed left winger and a left-footed right winger, I think it shouldn't be as set in stone as it was. Because you looked at the issues we had last year, I would argue having somebody that can go and beat a defender over a 5-yard burst and whip in an early cross across the front of the penalty spot or the 6-yard box is just as important. If you want your goals to come from your wide position, sure, then maybe you need a Mohamed Salah-esque type player. But, we spent £200 million on centre forwards. So we got to feed them. We got to make sure that they have the ammunition to go out there and succeed. Rayan and Neto, again, as a collective, brilliant. no problem. As long as the first part is in there, absolutely no problem. Creativity is the key now, said Jessa. I would say, yeah, I would agree with that. And I certainly promise you, whoever we do bring in, I'm not going to be expecting Mohamed Salah numbers from them. Not at all. He was a unicorn. We're not going to have another Mohamed Salah. So that's why the club put the money in to the Florian Wirtz, the Alexander Isak, the Hugo Ekitikes. So as was said by that person a moment ago, we need to now give these guys the ammunition. We need to create the opportunities, and pace is a big part of what we're missing. Bring back Trent Alexander-Arnold. So here's the thing though, Debs. Even in, let's say tomorrow we woke up and Trent said, I miss home, I want to come home. Can you imagine anybody being able to then go to John W. Henry and say, hey, John, the fella who walked out on us, embarrassed us and left for nothing pretty much. Well, he wants back now, so I want £70 million to give Real Madrid to bring the guy back that might not have left if he just sorted his contract out. I can't see a way that works out, because if somebody came into my office, knocked on the door and said, the guy that we told you we could probably live without if he went to Real Madrid, well, seems I was barking up the wrong tree there, gaffer, and I need a load of dough here to solve that problem. You see what I mean? And it comes down to one article stuck in my mind about the whole Trent situation. And I view it as a problem, but others would view it as the club doing the right thing. And the article basically said, Liverpool could have pulled the fast one on Trent before Klopp announced he was leaving and got him to sign a new deal before the news broke that Klopp was leaving. But they didn't want to do that out of respect for Trent and the situation. Now, you can make a very good argument the club did the right thing. I would argue that the way it played out showed that they absolutely did not do the right thing. And I would argue that they absolutely should have fucking hoodwinked them and tied them into a deal, because they should have protected their own interests. Players are always going to be inherently selfish, as are their agents. You always should assume the worst. So I think we got a little bit cocky and thought he wouldn't leave. And I think that maybe played into allowing the situation to go and drag on a little bit longer than it should have, which then shifted the, what's the word I'm looking for? Leverage in the conversation. If we're looking at a Chelsea winger, the only acceptable answer for me is Estevao. Oh, sign me up. Sign me up for Estevao. I mean, there's not a world Chelsea will sell him. But yeah, you can sign me up for that one. Could Barcola be a smokescreen for Desiree Doué to Liverpool and Mbaye bringing his brother as well? I don't think so, mate, no, because Doué's getting his game time there and doing quite well. And I think he'll stay there. But look, he's incredible. I remember the first time I really knew much about Desiree Doué was when he came off the bench against us in the first year that Arne Slot was coach. He came off the bench against us. I think it was at Anfield. And I just remember thinking, holy shit, this kid, at the time I think he was 18. Oh my God, how good is this kid? And he's on their bench. He's brilliant. Brilliant footballer. So, Savinho on the right is interesting. I'm dubious about Manchester City selling Savinho to us. I know the article's out there. I know Spurs are in the mix trying to sign him, but I also know they wouldn't sell us Julian Alvarez, because Liverpool were willing to sell Manchester City Luis Diaz, but they weren't willing to sell us Julian Alvarez because they didn't want to sell directly to a rival. Now, I know they've sold to Arsenal and lots of other clubs, but that's a story that was doing the rounds, and I just don't think, unless I'm very wrong, they'd sell Savinho to us. I think they'd far prefer to sell him to Spurs or somebody else. Jordan said, not going to lie, Craig, this seems like a bit of a mess. Feels like some last minute additions Hughes heading Saudi. It does feel like a bit of a mess. But look, I will be the first one to admit to you, Jordan, that I'm extremely critical in a lot of things. So my head doesn't take a lot for me to go into a negative mindset on things. So yeah, I would say it is a bit of a mess. But there are far more calm people than me who think, no, just let it play out. The window's open. There's still plenty of time. It's just with every day that goes by and nothing else happening, and pre-season now being 11 days away from when the first lads are back, I would like to see a bit more activity. And I'm a little bit surprised we haven't looked to utilise some of the free market signings as well. Like Senesi went to Spurs, Robbo went to Spurs. Harry Wilson's moving somewhere as well, I think Leeds United. So I'm surprised we weren't looking to fill out a bit with some of those type of players. Senesi would have been a really good one to get. Jack said, who are we looking at for right wing now then? Your guess is as good as mine, dude. I don't know is the honest answer, mate. I can only give you lists that have been in the public domain, and one of them is Christian Pulisic, Bradley Barcola, Yakuba Minte, Said El Mala, Bouzamana Touré, who's now gone to Newcastle, and Mateus Fernandez Pardo. So, a lot of these names that we're being linked with are starting to make their way to other clubs as well. Like yesterday, we were talking about Bouzamana Touré. Would he be a decent option? Would he be somebody we could turn to? Well, no, not now, because he's going to Newcastle. So that's another option off the table. And as the options continue to get ticked off, and as the window moves along, the prices are just going to keep going up and up and up because the scarcity of players is there. This from Anfield Watch. They said Liverpool are going to have to pay Tottenham 100 million to sign top defensive target Mickey van de Ven this summer, per report in Football Insider. Is he worth it? Is he worth it? So I guess the answer I would have to whether if Mickey van de Ven is worth £100 million would be, do we view him as the leader of that defence in the future? Because if we view Mickey van de Ven as the guy to replace Virgil long term, then he's probably not worth the money. But if he fits the plan, I don't really give a fuck what the money is. That's my take on it as a fan. If they think that Van de Ven is the successor to Virgil, I don't really care what the money is if he's the guy, as long as you get him. Now, of course, you don't want to see your club bent over a barrel, but 100 million is the new 50 million, it seems. And this is the way football is. And, you've looked at Mateus Fernandez going for 85 million quid, Tonali going for 100 million quid. Elliot Anderson going for 115 million quid. So I guess the question for me as a fan is more, if he's the successor to Virgil and he's the one that they want, then you go get the man that you want. And the number is what the number is. But what I don't want to find out is that he's the one that Liverpool want. We spend 10 weeks lowballing and then eventually end up overpaying even more towards the end, or just not getting the player. Romano said, what's going to happen with your future after the World Cup? About Barcola. Barcola focuses on the World Cup now. After that, my future, I don't know. Also, a deal was agreed or signed off today as well that sees Lucas Stevenson join Bolton. And I have to say, I was quite impressed with Lucas Stevenson in last summer's pre-season. But he's now completed his move from Liverpool to Bolton. The fee is £700,000, but Liverpool have negotiated a 20% sell-on clause in that deal. So wishing Luca the very best in his move. And, hopefully if he does move again in the future, Liverpool make a few quid. So the one topic I haven't talked about yet tonight is the future of Virgil van Dijk. An article in Gazzetta Italia said that AC Milan are dreaming of signing Liverpool captain Virgil van Dijk this summer at Ruben Amorim's request. The Dutch defender is Amorim's preferred choice to strengthen the Rossinieri's defence, although his salary and Liverpool's reluctance to sell may make it difficult. If a move for Van Dijk proves impossible, then Sporting defender Gonzalo Inacio has been identified as Milan's alternative. And I mean, the question that I would have is it unnerving to anybody else that we're seeing a few articles about Van Dijk this summer? There was Galatasaray a while back, AC Milan now. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we've anything to be concerned about this summer with Virgil. I don't think Liverpool would be stupid enough to sell Virgil this summer. But, you know, it is concerning. I suppose until we could hear from Virgil to say there's nothing to it, maybe I'm just getting myself into a tizzy. We should raid Barca for Yamal, Koundé and Pedri. I mean, the middle name on your list could be possible there, bro, but I don't think the rest would be. And also confirmation that a number of clubs did try to sign Tommy Elphick in the Championship as their potential head coach, but he is now chosen to stick with Andoni Iraola, and the four coaches and fitness coaches that Andoni Iraola wanted to bring in with him from Bournemouth are now at the club, which is good news. Chad said, the Hughes problem reminds me of athletic directors at American universities. Big brand name. Schools do go get whoever they want. Liverpool is a destination job. Would they struggle to hire quality? No, probably not, Chad. You know, I would agree with you on that one. Like, ultimately, when Richard Hughes goes to a player now, it's not so much the Richard Hughes factor as it would be you're coming to Liverpool Football Club. So, yes, sporting directors will have some loyalty from some people they've worked with over the years. And, of course, you're almost renting the little black book from them. But at the same time, Chad, like you've said, Liverpool is the marquee. Liverpool is the attraction. So, yeah, whoever comes in, I'm sure, you know, won't have to spend too long selling the project to anybody. It's Liverpool Football Club. Love from Donegal. Right back to you. Right back to you. I want to get up for the rally. My miss is a huge rally fan, and I've always meant to bring her up to Donegal for the rally and never get round to it. So I must get up there at some point because it's definitely on my wife's bucket list. Pedro Marquez is tipped to be the next sporting director, an internal promotion where he's likely achieved heavily this window as current director of football development, ensuring some continuity. Yeah, look, Pedro Marquez is certainly a very credible name. Brought him in from Portugal and has been highly regarded since he's come in. He was part of the, I don't want to call it project, but he was part of the search party, is that the right word? With Michael Edwards for more clubs for FSG, that obviously FSG never pulled the trigger on. But yeah, Marquez will be an interesting show, all right? Red Dinosaur Mother said, is there a chance we could hijack Toure, or if Newcastle signed him? They haven't signed him, but I don't think there's a chance to hijack the deal at this point. Feels like this one is one that even Newcastle won't mess up. Itachi said, 3 weeks ago, I was hyped for this transfer window. Now my mood is like Arne at times. What is this club doing? Start buying players. We're so lazy and slow. I kind of echo a lot of what you've said. And no, I'm not back to Arne slot level days of frustration. I'm not. But I definitely feel like some of the goodwill has been washed away quite quickly again. Particularly because of one factor, Itachi. You can't tell the world that replacing Salah is the top priority and that Diamonde is the guy, shit the bed, and then think everyone's going to be happy about it. So yeah, I'm not quite at Arne levels of angry. I'm not, but I am, again, frustrated at Liverpool not moving quickly enough. What's up with the teddy bear in the background of the stream? So it's a long story that I don't really want to bore you with again, but gist of it is, my wife's a huge Elmo fan, and that's Elmo. We were on holidays years ago in Florida when my son was about 5 or 6. My son had just been diagnosed as autistic at that time. So we were in Busch Gardens in Florida, and my wife seen Elmo, you know, one of the characters walking around the Sesame Street part of Busch Gardens. And my wife said, "Oh, there's Elmo." And I think she probably just used my son as an excuse to want to get a photo with Elmo because she is an Elmo fanatic. So, long story short, my wife goes over there with my son to get a photo with Elmo. So they queue up, and then it's their turn. They go up to get the photo. And it was quite loud inside the park. And my son was putting his hands over his ears because he was having some sensory issues at the time. And he was getting a little bit stressed. So I'm watching on as a dad, and I'm thinking, oh shit, I hope this is okay. I hope Sabrina's okay up there with him. And then Elmo did this, same as my son, and calmed him down because my son seen Elmo doing it. And that's the photo that we got. And I love Elmo because of that now. Even though it was a person in a costume that was obviously really well trained. It was a lovely moment. And I then became a massive Elmo fan as well. So we've always tried to have something Elmo-y. In the old studio in the background, there was an Elmo. So this time, because we're in the real world, I thought, you know what? Let's just buy an old Tickle Me Elmo. So that's just the story. It's my own little homage to Elmo. Where are we? So Ink Story 96 said, I would rather experiment on another Munoz type player for wing positions than pay 100 million for Minta. I saw a lot of Brighton games, just a waste. Yeah, I've never been convinced on Minta either, mate. And I would agree with you. I'd rather take a chance than go out there and spend big dough on somebody who I'm certainly not convinced on either. Now I have to say, lash the money down for Rayan. J1 Chalk said, I never comment, but this is what drives me nuts. So happy to interact here, bro, but just don't know what this is. What's driving you nuts? Sorry, I'm not trying to be smart around. I want to interact with you. I just don't know what it is that's driving you nuts. Sarr would be a good signing and in his prime. Yeah, a few people have been throwing around Sarr's name in the last couple of days, and I can't say I'd be angry about it. You know, every time we play against him, he certainly seems to be a handful, and you know, he's a good player, Ismaila Sarr, absolutely. Where are we? I'm scrolling up. Gentleman said to me, look at the previous comment from me. I'm scrolling up to try and find it. Yes, where is it? I'm either blind, mate, or I'm not seeing it. One sec. Still trying to find this comment. Sorry, mate. One sec. Yeah, I don't know. I scrolling, can't seem to find it. Nope. Yeah, can't find it. So whatever it is, mate. If I've done it, whoopsie. Don't think there is one. So we'll leave it at that. Anyway, let's move on. There was another comment I seen a second ago. Once ago, oh, this one. Craig, I've been offered one of 3 match tickets next season: Man U, Man City, or the Derby. Which one should I pick? Oh, that's a good question. I've been to 2 of those 3 games, and I have to say the best experience I had was at the Derby. I've been to 2 Merseyside derbies. One we beat them 4-0, and the other one we drew 1-1. It was the one where it was a DIJK scored a screamer. So I think the Derby's a great one. I was lucky enough to go to a United game this season. Didn't get the result we wanted, and that probably had a big say on how I felt about it. But I don't know, man. Any of those 3 games are great games. So whatever one maybe suits your schedule best. Mr. A. Santino said, would you be okay with Minta if it meant we get Bowen too? Could be an interesting stopgap until Rayan. I mean, if we got Bowen in, as I was saying earlier on, Mr. A. Santino, I would almost say like that would be preparing the groundwork for Joshua Abe in the future. So when Bowen's time, let's say, was coming to an end, you would think that Joshua Abe would be maybe ready to step up into the first team at that point. I just don't. Minta just doesn't do it for me personally. Would I take Johan Bakayoko at Liverpool? Didn't he move? Didn't he move from PSV Eindhoven? Or again, if I got that wrong, I thought he moved somewhere. Again, he was a name that was linked to us, and you know, it was thought that maybe like it's kind of like Doku. Doku was another name that was linked to Liverpool for quite a while, and just obviously never happened for us. He's at Leipzig. Yes, there you go. So again, they're not going to be wanting the player who's only came in the door there to be going out again. And I still think if you're at Leipzig, start knocking for Antonio Nusa if you want to get somebody there. I wish this was a call-in show. I'm from America, and there's some views on Rock Nation. Well, J1, if you want to email, bro, email your views, because I'd love to find as much information out as I can about Rock Nation sports and stuff. I know a little bit about Rock Nation as a Jay-Z fan, but you know about their business in the sports world, I don't know too much, dude. So if you do want to email, contact@AnfieldAgenda.com. We'd be happy to hear from you. Yeah, because I remember at the time there was a piece we read out from ITK Space that said, you know, those within the industry are kind of a little bit peeved at how they acted and how they went about their business. But I'm a bit more blunt in that I think if their whole shtick or their whole thing was to get him a move to PSG, and they've got PSG to the table, then I guess you could say they've done their job. I don't know why we let Mboma go to Man United. Agreed. Mboma would have been a very good signing for Liverpool. Same with a few other players over the years, you know, I've looked at and thought, why are we just sitting here like Semenyo? Again, why are we sitting here looking at Semenyo going to Man City when we need somebody in that position? So there's been a few of those over the years. Paradigm said they should sell Isak. I think we got to see Isak for at least one season more, personally. So we asked, should we pay 55 million for Jules Koundé? And 77% of people said yes. Ethan said, well, Craig, what's the crack? Have you ever been to Newry? Sure, of course I have, mate. I'm from Dublin originally. We've all been up to Newry at the Christmas time for the old Sainsbury's shop and whatnot to get the cheaper drink and stuff back in the day. It's been a few years now since I've been up to Newry. But yeah, of course, man, I love going up north. Belfast is the city myself, my wife always try and go away to for a weekend if we can get a weekend away in Ireland somewhere. Yeah, haven't been up now in a few years, but there was a lovely little cafe we used to go to. It was kind of just near where the old Woolworths used to be, up around the corner. It was this cafe we used to go into, and they used to have this gorgeous strawberry tart, like an apple tart made with strawberries. It was fucking gorgeous. But yeah, haven't been up there in a long time. Michael said, Craig, are you streaming tomorrow night? Yep. Yeah, I think the plan is to stream every night except, let me just check here for you. There was one night I knew I wasn't working. Sunday, I think, is the only evening I'm not going to be streaming for the rest of the week. Unless, of course, something health-wise pops up. But yeah, the plan is to stream tomorrow, Saturday, and not stream Sunday. Itachi said, throw all your money in for Michael Elise. Hughes, a laugh at PSG. Jokes aside, Elise, what a player. Love him. Dare to dream. Oh, he's brilliant. But I would say Real Madrid's in his future, in all honesty. And I think he's always wanted to move to Real Madrid. Now, I'm not saying it'll happen this summer, but I do think eventually he'll end up at Real Madrid. I agree, though. Incredible player. And, seeing him almost in the number 10 position for France, in behind Mbappe, I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was absolutely incredible. Monster Madness said, I feel we need 3-2-3-2. DM move back to make 5 or move forward, make an attacking 7 with Wirtz in the middle, feeding the ball around him. Yeah, look, we definitely need to make sure this season, I would say Wirtz should nearly have a free license. Always needing him to press, but he should be able to find pockets of space. And the wide positions, I think we should be looking for them to supply Alexander Isak rather than thinking about them as the solution to our goal concerns. We need to do what the plan was, which was to spread the goal burden around and not be as reliant on one person. And we need to do that by getting Isak firing, chipping in a few more goals from midfield. I'm really intrigued to see what way Areola strikes the balance between, let's say, a Maka, Gravenberch, Wirtz, Szoboszlai headache. Who he uses, in what positions, who's more front-footed. Really intrigued to see how he uses Dominic Szoboszlai and how he fits into a system. Are we still going in for Lamine Camara? So again, Newcastle are the ones that I've seen most strongly linked to Lamine Camara recently. For me, it was just that Andres Chemo guy and Buadi. They're the only real names I've seen thrown around lately. Tracy said, would we have the same expectation as Slots for a season? Well, I don't know what everybody else's expectation was for Slots for a season, Tracy, but I didn't expect him to win the league title. So if you're asking me, do I expect Andoni Iraola to win the league title? Oh God, no, not at all. I don't think that's a fair, realistic expectation. I do expect us to be in the Champions League positions by the end of the season, but like I've said to a few people, as long as we see progression, as long as we see things, progressing as the season goes on, players understanding the system, performances maybe getting better, fitness looking good, and then maybe we do something second half of the season in a cup competition. For me, if you got out year one with Iraola in the Champions League with a domestic cup and a decent Champions League run, quarterfinals or further, that would be more than credible. Craig, who would you choose? Chema Andres or Cashew Sano? I don't know enough about Sano, Brian, to be honest, mate. I just seen his name linked to us the other day, but I'd be a liar, mate, if I told you I've watched much of him. So, but then again, I'm probably the same for the young lad from Spain as well. I just think with the Spanish link and Iraola and his knowledge of the Spanish market, probably lean in that direction. If Hughes left tomorrow, how would you rate his time at the club out of 10? I think around 5 due to last summer. Otherwise, he'd be a 2. Maybe harsh. Good question, dude. Good question. Look, sometimes you can only judge somebody's role a few years down the line when the signings that they've made have come full circle and had their time at the club. But there are other things about Richard Hughes that I can't not say. He wanted Arne to stay. That, for me, was a huge red flag. When everybody else around was doubting and the reports were that he was fully behind Arne, that was a piss take to me. And then on top of that, if you take the contractual situation, the players we've let walk out the door for free, I would probably rate him as a 4, maybe a 5 like yourself. Yeah, because saying the biggest number to get players, isn't rocket science. 125 million for Isak. I think you or me could have got that done for 125 million. Wirtz, it's hard to know on the convincing side of it how much of us being willing to pay more than Bayern played into the factor into it. So yeah, I think 4, somewhere 4 or 5 around that. Josh, how are you, my friend? Said, hey Craig, like I said yesterday, it feels like we're doing what we did with Slot in his first season by not signing anybody. I really hope I'm wrong. I just want the players that we need, and I hope VVD stays. I understand where you're coming from, dude. I get that frustration and that fear. I never understood that, by the way. Because we knew what we needed, right? And it doesn't matter to me if a new coach comes in year one. This idea of Arne Slot having to look at the squad and assess it, while at the same time telling us that Arne Slot's not responsible for transfers, I always found that one a little bit tough to swallow, because he's either in charge of them or involved in them, or he's not. And he shouldn't be at that stage. And I would say a manager, for me, or a head coach, has to earn the right to have more influence. And you earn that right by getting results. And in year 2, you could absolutely argue that Arne had far more scope to walk into the boardroom and say, I've just delivered you a league title in year 1. This is what I think we need. But it still doesn't excuse that we let basically 2 windows go by and did nothing. While everybody around us was strengthening. And we've went from a position of strength where we won the league to putting up such a pathetic defence of it that it was embarrassing. Dom said, viruses in Boston, complacency is the main trait and continues to bite us on the arse. And cheapness. I would throw in cheapness. And it's something that you seem to hear from every avenue of anything FSG own. Red Sox fans think they're cheap. I think they're cheap. Many other Liverpool fans think they're cheap. And one good window out of 12 doesn't really cover that up, particularly when, even in our biggest window, we were still outspent net by Arsenal. Scott said, do you think if EVD does go, then Liverpool's season won't look very strong? A lot of key figures being let go. The foundation Klopp built is being torn. It would certainly concern me a lot, yeah. I mean, how do you look at not having Virgil van Dijk? Yeah, I'm not ready for that one. I'm not, man. I'm not ready to say goodbye to Virgil yet. There's been so much, dude. Like, how again are we sitting here talking about, well, we'll let Curtis Jones go for free in a year. Like, then we're letting a homegrown player in the prime of their career walk out of the club doors for nothing. That's the height of stupidity. And then we've got Virgil van Dijk and Alisson. And I think with Virgil, you could maybe accept it. That, okay, at 35, heading for 36 at that point, maybe it's the right time. But Alisson, I would argue, if he can stay injury-free, there's another 2-3 years easily at the top level for Alisson. So I never understood that one. Harvey Elliott, another one that we're probably going to get a pittance on if he goes this summer. And if he doesn't go this summer, he'll have to get a new deal or leave for free next year. Costas, the argument to keep him, I think is a foiled one because, again, he'd go for free in a year and I don't want him getting a new contract. So I think we need a left back. And the idea of not getting the right back, which has been put out there by Ian Doyle as something that might possibly happen, is just the height of insanity. Theo, I've seen your post 4 or 5 times now, dude. I haven't got time to go back over. You can see the clock, mate. There's 5 minutes to go. There hasn't been a whole lot, though, Theo, bro. There hasn't been a whole lot tonight, mate, that we spoke about. There's a little bit on Jules Koundé, a link to him. There was a bit about Virgil van Dijk being wanted by AC Milan and Ruben Amorim. A little bit on Factor 50 Richie heading off to Saudi. That's kind of it, mate. It hasn't been... It was more an evening we've been chatting than breaking news stories and stuff, to be honest, Theo. And then there was some links to Pedro Neto, which, I don't know, seems to just come out of nowhere. Oh, no, you're not spamming, dude. Sorry. What I meant was I'd seen the comment. I just didn't really have much to go back over, to be honest, mate. It's been one of the quieter days. It's one of those that, we just didn't have a lot of stories, dude, to talk about. Craig, as a replacement for Ali, who'll be gone in a few years, would you take the Atalanta goalkeeper? I don't know anything about him. I don't, sorry. Goalkeeper-wise, who who would I go for? Like if I was looking at a goalkeeper now to come in, I tell you, I do have a lot of faith in Armin Petri. What I've seen of him as a former keeper myself impresses me, and I do think he could have a bright future. But I just think, I still think we're foolish the way we let Kelleher go and not putting in a buyback clause in that deal. That just feels silly to me. I'm not sure if Georgi Marmadashvili is ready to step in or if he's good enough to step in, but I am open-minded on it. Craig, is it a big chance we don't sign a CDM? I'd have to say it's a possibility, Oliver. I couldn't give you a percentage on it, but, when you're seeing articles talking about outgoings needing to happen first, it concerns me because it doesn't mean you're approaching this as a priority position if you're having to wait for players to go. So all I can say to you, Oliver, is that if we don't sign him by the end of the window, that tells us what we need to know. It'd be stupid again. Why haven't we already signed Kunde? He's a steal. I don't know, but I would snap him up at that price personally. And maybe, hopefully we do hear something on that one in the next few weeks. Would you take a chance on Nusa on the right? Yes. I like Antonio Nusa. The only thing I've always said about Nusa was if Leipzig were categorical that they were only losing one winger and it was Diomande, you're not going to get both out. So, maybe you could go in early, try and shithouse PSG and try and get Nusa out the door by agreeing a fee with them. And then they have even more leverage to try and keep Diomande for another year. But I'd happily have Nusa. I think he's a really good player and can again operate off either side. Can Elmo play right back, Craig? Us England need one. He said he could at a push, but don't be expecting Trent level crosses from him, he said. But he said he'd do it. He'd do it. He'd do whatever's asked of him. He's a team player, Elmo. And thank you, by the way, Padge, for 10 months with us, man, as a member. Does anybody else get spammed with ads during the lives? It does my head in. Any recommendations? Yeah, get YouTube Premium and you won't have any ads. Or if you'd like, we can put up a paywall, so you have to pay for the content. Because, the studio, the equipment, our livelihoods, all these things don't just fall out of thin air, mate, And I won't lie to you, that particular type of comment as a content creator winds me up fiercely because use Brave. Right, can I just say something without trying to sound like a cunt? If you like a content creator and you want this content creator to stick around and be here, you're going to have to accept the trade-off. So the trade-off is either paywall and the content creator gets paid that way, or ads. To say that you use Brave or whatever it is a fuck you to the content creator that you supposedly like. Because you're saying to that content creator, I like you, but I don't like you enough to sit through a minute's worth of ads. So screw you and your livelihood. I'm just looking after me. And that's your right to do so. But it isn't really a balanced way of looking at it, for me. The donations you get and sponsors should cover that instead. The one sponsor that we have. Now, how do you know about the finances of running a channel or what any of the things are? And how do you know what donations we get? For instance, do you know that each donation we get, we lose between 35 and 55% of? Are you aware of that? Because it happens. If somebody gives us a super chat and the super chat ends in 99, then Apple have taken 25-30%, Google have taken 30-35%, and then there's the tax, and then there's all these other things. So every 10 quid that you might see in a super chat, we might see after tax £3, perhaps. So you're wrong again. And sponsors, I mean, what sponsors? We have one sponsor that we play 6 times a month. That's it. So, and what I don't get is, we are the only big Liverpool channel that doesn't have a paywall. The only one, because we made a promise at the start that we'll do it. But to do that, you have to have a trade-off. You know, so sitting there lazily saying the ads and sponsors you get. Do you think sponsors just kick your door down to come in and go, hey, dude, I have a truckload of money I want to wheel into you? That's not how it works. It's really hard. And even at that, you know, you're building up a relationship with them over a long period of time. And on top of that, there's lots of stuff we say no to because we don't think it's a good fit. You know, so we don't really do betting stuff on the channel. We don't talk with casinos or anything because we don't think it's a good natural fit. So we do try our hardest to limit the interference for you, and we work really hard to try to make sure that we can keep the content is absolutely free. That's all I can say. After that, up to you what you want to do. You know, you've your own free will. If you use ad blockers, I'll never know about it. You know, I won't know unless you tell me, but, you know, I just want to make you aware as a content creator how it works. And on top of all of that, let me just say this as well. It took 6 years to get to the point of making any money. So that was 6 years of freedom, 6 years of 30 grand of my own money invested into the channel before we seen a penny back, really. So, you know, it isn't as easy as you think, or else everybody be doing it. But I'm also not trying to cry poor mouth about it. It's just, unfortunately, ads are a necessity, and I can't do anything about that. I don't do any of this stuff lightly, though. You don't ever think that we come into here thinking, how can we screw more money out of everyone? Of course you want to be successful, and of course you want to do well. But I've been in a room with YouTubers who have gone through their streams after they've gone live and put an ad every minute. Every minute. So I don't know what else I can say, man. It's up to you. As I said, it's up to you. So you don't have wheelbarrows of money being brought into your house? No, unfortunately not. No, I wish I did. Now, look, don't get me wrong. Like I said, we're doing all right, you know. We're doing well. But you know, there's a lot of reinvestment as well that goes on into it, you know, because you want to try and improve, bringing more people in. We've got a couple of things happening behind the scenes at the minute that we hope I'm able to bring to you guys really soon. You know, we're looking at introducing written pieces very soon as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. And we've got people coming back to help out with social media stuff. We've brought Lewis in, we've brought Bence in, Chris is with us, Connor's there, I'm here. You know, we're trying really hard to get that balance right. But, you know, we're not going to be perfect. Right, let's keep going for a few more minutes anyway. You know, the clock's over, but I'm having a good time. So let's keep chatting. I can see both sides. The content creator is right to call that out. I can also understand why the viewer is growing tiresome with ads and YouTube rolled out 3 unskippable ads in the same break. Then the answer is to buy YouTube Premium, right? Respectfully, because that way every one of the content creators that you like, you don't have to sit through ads for. That's the game, you know? You wouldn't be able to go through this without having ads on. It's impossible. That's just the lay of the land, you know? And if you can't afford YouTube Premium, then I think, respectfully, you're just going to have to sit through some ads. Same as everything. Like, people have just become... Like, here's one for you, right? Just as an example. A lot of people, and this isn't aimed at you guys in this conversation, but I see it in IFL TV's comments quite a bit, because I'm a boxing fan, and I watch their content quite a bit. And I always see, in any of their interviews... timestamps, no timestamps, lazy. I can tell you as a content creator, the fuck would I be putting in timestamps? You mean so I can tell people intentionally to watch less of my content? Now, look, our type of content doesn't really lend itself to timestamps. It's not a structured thing. But if I was sitting down doing an interview with Eddie Hearn, let's say, where we have 7 talking points, maybe, yeah, I'd look at it differently. But I don't know. It is what it is. And yeah, look, all I can tell you is it is what it is on the ads. If you don't like it, no problem. You know, if it's unbearable for you, sad to see you go, but nothing I can do about it. My wife and I use YouTube all day long, so YouTube Premium makes life so much less stressed. So I have a YouTube Premium family plan because my son watches YouTube quite a bit. I wouldn't be somebody who pays... I don't watch too much stuff on YouTube. I watch IFL TV, Boxing Social, and a few other bits and pieces. But look, this is a fair conversation from both sides, and I'm not taking any offence by it. I'm just trying to give you the lay of the land. If you want content and you want content at a decent level, that costs money to produce and make. And if it's your job, you know, it's a fluid job. There's no guarantee each month when you go in. It's not like you go into work in, I don't know, fucking pick a job. You go to work at your local bank and you get a salary of whatever a year. We start every month playing catch up every month, chasing what you have to make to break even. It just is what it is, you know. I see, maybe it's an age thing as well. I grew up having no option to skip or to fast forward, you know, and you were just stuck with ads, and that was that. You know, you're watching TV, and if you missed your show, you had to either record it or whatever, but if you wanted to watch it live, you got ads. I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, you know, I'm just trying to explain both sides of it. Can I understand why people want content without ads and breaks in it? Yeah, of course I can. Of course I can. It's annoyed me in the past. Of course, yeah, I can. But, you know, we try to think about this from a community standpoint, and we do a lot of things to try to be accessible. And I could be on a cash grab. I could do things to make more money, but we choose not to try and get the balance. But it doesn't mean everyone's going to be happy with it. That's okay as well. I appreciate both sides of it. Would you ever do call-ins? We flirted with it a few times, but the fear is always, you know, do you get the assholes in? And it's actually quite, to do it to a proper degree, technically it's quite difficult. But I would never say never on it. Yeah, I'd be open to anything if we thought we could do it and do it well. Paul Martin said, it's like everything in life. It's a compromise. If the viewer doesn't like it, it's on them to change it. Either stop watching, suck it up, or pay up for the benefits. Kind of is what it is, you know. Yeah, it's not much you can do about it, other than either buy YouTube Premium or turn it off when it gets to an ad or you're annoyed. And I get it. Like, there's no judgment from me on it. All I'm saying to you is, if you're saying to somebody, I love your content, but I'm also using an ad blocker, I just want you to know that that's basically sticking 2 fingers up to the lad whose content, or girl whose content you said you liked. What do I think? Kubu. I've never been convinced by him, and I've actually been surprised that he hasn't had a move away from Sociedad. But, you know, when I watch Sociedad, and it isn't all that much, but I even keep an eye on their teams, he's not even somebody who, from recollection, seems to do quite well. You know, he's in and out of the Sociedad team a bit, and they've been quite poor as well. Ronaldo sister said Ronaldo will retire after the World Cup. Fair enough. He's nothing to prove to anybody at international level. He's been an incredible servant to Portuguese football. Peter said, evening Craig, how about Noosa now that Diamonde's out? Absolutely. I wouldn't say no to Noosa at all, Peter. I think he's a good player. Can maybe have call-ins for members, as then you would know who's legit. Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. Certainly, we could, yeah, no, it is. No, that's a possibility, definitely. Stop you hearing the content, but not your fault. Money makes the world spin. I don't know what you mean by that, mate. I don't know. Like it's probably a generational thing. Like I said, I grew up in an era where ads were just a kind of, so you couldn't get around them. Ads were there. They are what they are. But I get the frustration. Of course I do. Like I've been watching stuff where, for instance, I love watching whatchamacallit, Dutton Ranch on Paramount. But we don't have the Paramount where we can skip the ads. So, I get either 30-second or 2-minute ads during Dutton Ranch 5 or 6 times. And I think it's worth the sacrifice to watch the show I like. But, if I didn't want to do that, I could pay extra to get the ad-free version. But I don't think I use that service enough to justify it. I wonder if we've not signed another winger yet because we're waiting for Barcola. I do want him, but I would rather we sign a winger now before Barcola. So the problem, Harry James, for me with Barcola would be, we're at PSG's time frame in that regard. And the longer the situation drags out for them with Diamande, the later it'll end up going for us. And then we have to sort that situation as well. It almost feels subservient, if that makes any sense. What's your thoughts on getting Gilberto Mora? I read something, Matthew, on Gilberto Mora earlier on, and it was about, I think he's represented by Rafaela Pimenta, and I think it was something like she said that she's going to do her best to get the most money possible for him if he moves. But to the best of my knowledge, in his Tijuana contract, there's a $20 million release clause. So if that's in his contract, well, then that's all people have to pay to at least have the conversation with him and his agent. And also because we chose, or we were bringing in that young Colombian guy, I don't know if we'd have the space for somebody of that profile in that position. It would be nice if viewers could choose to pay the creator directly or stop reduce ads, thereby reducing the viewers feeling bombarded. Of course, yeah, I get it. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I wish the cut sometimes wasn't as big from YouTube and that, but I also at the same time respect the fact that they give us the platform to work on. The one that winds me up is Apple. That's the one that really pisses me off. Apple coming in sometimes and taking 25-30% for what? For what? Just processing a payment. At least with Google, you think, Google take the 30-35%, but they give us the platform and they give us a lot of tools to work with, so that's fine. Peter said, worried about Szoboszlai not signing. We've already lost Ibu, Trent, Robbo, Van Dijk, Ali, Robbo, Fab, Genie and Salah over the years. Breaks my heart. I have a concern about Szoboszlai as well, but I'm hoping I have nothing to be concerned about, Peter. I'm hoping that the club get that one moving, because I'd be a liar, dude, if I told you I'm not a little bit concerned about Madrid coming sniffing around. So yeah, getting his contract extension done. Important. And also another thing to keep in mind is we do long streams on here, so you might seem like you're getting a lot of ads, but we usually do nearly 2 hours worth of streaming, so they're quite long streams as well. But anyway, I don't know how we got into that conversation, but certainly I appreciate everybody's perspective on it. I just can only give you the reasoning from our side of it. And if that's not a good enough answer, no problem. If it doesn't work for you, as I said, no problem. We love having you here, but we have to do our best to make this work. I feel like membership should remove ads on live streams. I can understand not removing them on standard videos, but I think paying the channel directly should give an incentive directly from YouTube. It's something that as a content creator I wouldn't be against, but we don't have any say over that. Do you know what I've often thought about? And I couldn't do this, but I have often thought it's mad that there's not like a union for YouTubers or content creators to leverage their voices into these ideas that you're speaking about, because some of them are really good. Like on Twitch, that was the case. If you had Twitch sub, you didn't pay, you didn't get ads, and that worked for everybody. And as a content creator, I'd absolutely not be against that for you guys if you remember that you didn't get ads. We just, other than making the stream member only views or member only chat, we can't do that and still have everyone watch the streams. And we've always promised that we won't price anybody out of being able to watch the content, because we understand everybody are from different walks of life with different financial perspectives. And I don't want somebody who might be, you know, relying on the stream for a bit of camaraderie each night or a little chat with people. I don't want them to feel pushed out of it because they can't buy a membership or something. Aaron said, I don't know how it's Craig's fault. There's ads anyway. If you don't want to pay for premium, you don't have to deal with ads. Look, I understand the frustration from people at times. I'm human as well, you know, I get it. But I try to be as honest and transparent about everything as I can. But you're never going to make everybody happy. And I get that. I understand that as well. There's no offense taken from me on it. Could we get Foden or Nusa, Wolves' young right winger? So Matheus Mane has been somebody we have been linked with. Ourselves and Manchester United have been linked a little bit over the past while. 35 million. But I've got to be honest, Jaden, and I've said this a few times, I think Matheus Mane would be best spent staying another year at Wolves before progressing his career and continuing the development of the club where he's settled. Because I don't think he's ready yet to come into a Liverpool or a Manchester United. What else we got? Which position would be the next signing, do you think? Oh, good question. Oh God, that is a really good one. I am guessing, let me say that up front. Which will I think? I think it'll be somewhere along the right-hand side. So whether it's right back or right wing, I think I just suspect it might be one of those two, but I don't know for certain where we're going next. Right, ladies and gents, I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Thank you for coming in again tonight and joining us. Appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow. Connor will be here in the morning. I will be here at about 4:30, and then we'll have a stream tomorrow night as well. Thank you for giving up some of your night to come in and have a chat with me. Again, if anybody does feel overwhelmed by adverts or stuff like that, I apologise if it's upsetting you. You know, I don't like anybody in our community feeling annoyed or pissed off. I want you guys to enjoy your time in here and come in and have a bit of a laugh with us. So, yeah, never want to upset anybody, as I was saying. And I'll certainly take it on board and appreciate your feedback. And look, ladies and gents, thank you again. Appreciate you all. We'll see you tomorrow.